Katharine Hepburn. Names the lesbian actors of old Hollywood. She dated in secret. Katharine Hepburn was born on May 12, 1907, in Hartford, Connecticut. She came from a background that was anything but typical for a future movie star. Her father, Thomas Hepburn, was a respected urologist, a pioneer in his field. Her mother, Catherine Martha Houghton, was a passionate suffragette and a pioneer for women's rights and birth control. They were educated, progressive, and instilled in their children a strong sense of independence, intellectual curiosity, and social responsibility. Young Kate was encouraged to think for herself, express her opinions, and engage in physical activities often reserved for boys at the time: swimming, tennis, golf. This upbringing fostered the fiercely independent spirit and athletic build that would later define her public persona. The family home was a place of lively debate and unconventional thinking, a stark contrast to the often rigid social norms of the era. Yet, even in this relatively liberal environment, some truths were perhaps too complex, too personal, to be fully explored, setting the stage for the secrecy that would later define her private life in the glare of Hollywood. This unique blend of privilege, intellectual stimulation, and encouragement of individuality shaped a young woman who was utterly unlike the typical ingenue of the stage or screen. Hepburn's path to becoming an actress wasn't always straightforward, but her undeniable talent and unique presence quickly set her apart. She discovered acting while attending Bryn Mawr College, a prestigious women's college, where she majored in history. After graduation, she threw herself into the world of theater, enduring the usual struggles of auditions, small roles, and trying to get noticed. She worked in summer stock and regional theaters, gradually building her skills and reputation. Her breakthrough on Broadway came in 1932 with the play The Warrior's Husband, where she played a strong, athletic Amazon. Her distinctive voice, sharp features, and unconventional energy caught the eye of talent scouts from Hollywood. It was David O. Selznick, then a producer at RKO Pictures, who saw her potential and signed her to a contract. Her early days in Hollywood were marked by both rapid success and significant friction. Her first film, A Bill of Divorcement, 1932, opposite John Barrymore, was a hit, and critics took notice of the newcomer. The very next year, she won her first Academy Award for Best Actress for Morning Glory. Playing a determined young actress striving for stardom, a role perhaps mirroring her own ambition. But even as she achieved stardom, Hepburn clashed with the studio system. She refused to play the typical glamour girl roles, resisted doing the required publicity stunts, wore trousers instead of skirts, and generally behaved in a way that bewildered and frustrated the studio executives and the press. Her accent was criticized, her appearance was debated, and she was famously labeled box office poison by independent theater owners in the late 1930s after a string of less commercially successful films. This early struggle solidified her reputation as a difficult, independent spirit, a woman determined to live on her own terms, even within the confines of the studio system. This inherent resistance to conformity, while challenging professionally at times, also laid the groundwork for her ability to maintain a fiercely private life later on. Despite the early box office poison label, Katharine Hepburn's talent was undeniable, and she engineered a remarkable comeback. She shrewdly acquired the film rights to The Philadelphia Story, a successful Broadway play she had starred in, and sold them to MGM on the condition that she play the lead role and have control over casting. The resulting film, co-starring Cary Grant and James Stewart, was a massive hit, cementing her return to A-list status and earning her another Oscar nomination. This marked a turning point, proving she could be a major commercial success on her own terms. Over the next several decades, Hepburn delivered one iconic performance after another, solidifying her place as a screen legend. Films like Woman of the Year, 1942, which marked the start of her famous pairing with Spencer Tracy, The African Queen, 1951 with Humphrey Bogart, Suddenly, Last Summer, 1959, Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, 1967, and The Lion in Winter, 1968, both of which earned her Oscars, showcased her incredible range and enduring appeal. She holds the record for the most Best Actress Oscar wins, with 4, a testament to her unparalleled skill and longevity. Her public image became synonymous with independence, intelligence, and a sort of aristocratic New England toughness. She was seen as a woman who didn't need anyone, a force of nature who lived exactly as she pleased. Part of this public image was intrinsically linked to her legendary, complex, and famously private relationship with actor Spencer Tracy. Their on-screen chemistry was electric, leading to 9 films together. Off-screen, they embarked on a relationship that lasted 26 years until Tracy's death in 1967. This was Hollywood's ultimate secret romance. Secret only in that Tracy, a devout Catholic, refused to divorce his wife, Louise, even though they lived separate lives. Hepburn became Tracy's devoted companion and caretaker, especially in his later years as he struggled with alcoholism and health issues. Their bond was deep, intellectual, and seemingly all-consuming in the public eye. The studio and the press largely respected their desire for privacy, or perhaps found it convenient to focus on this complex, yet ultimately conventional-seeming relationship as the primary narrative of Hepburn's personal life. But while the world was captivated by the Hepburn-Tracy romance, another, even more deeply hidden part of Katharine Hepburn's life was unfolding behind closed doors. For decades, speculation and rumors circulated within the tight-knit circles of Hollywood and the theater world about Hepburn's sexuality. While she had high-profile relationships with men, including a brief marriage and a significant affair with millionaire Howard Hughes before Tracy, many who knew her closely, and biographers who delved into her life after her death, painted a more complex picture. Hepburn herself was fiercely private, almost pathologically so, about her personal affairs. Her autobiography, Me, and is notably sparse on intimate details about her romantic life, particularly the Tracy relationship, and makes no mention of same-sex relationships. This intense privacy, however, didn't stop questions from swirling. Her independent nature, her rejection of traditional feminine roles, her preference for pants, her close friendships with women, and her unwavering secrecy fueled the whispers. And as the years passed, and particularly after her death, those whispers began to coalesce into a more concrete narrative, one revealed not by Hepburn herself naming names, but by those who claimed to know her truth and by the interpretation of her actions and writings by biographers. In the era of the major studios, homosexuality was not only taboo, but could mean the instant destruction of a career. Studio contracts often contained morality clauses that could be invoked for any behavior deemed scandalous, and same-sex relationships were at the top of that list. Stars' lives were meticulously controlled and crafted by the studios to maintain a clean, acceptable image for the public. Living openly as gay or lesbian was simply not an option for a major star who wanted to survive in the industry. This created a climate of intense fear, forcing many actors and actresses to live double lives, entering into lavender marriages, or maintaining elaborate facades to protect their careers. Katharine Hepburn, despite her outward independence, was still operating within this system, and the stakes for her were incredibly high. Protecting her career, which was her primary focus, meant her personal life had to be kept under an impenetrable lock and key. According to numerous biographers, notably William J. Mann in his book Kate, the Woman Who Was Hepburn, and corroborated by accounts from others who were close to her in different capacities, Katharine Hepburn had significant, long-term romantic relationships with women. These weren't just casual friendships, they were deeply emotional, often physically intimate bonds that were central to her private life, even while her public life was intertwined with men like Spencer Tracy. The most significant name consistently associated with Katharine Hepburn in this context is Laura Harding. Harding came from a wealthy, prominent New Jersey family and was an actress herself, although her career never reached Hepburn's heights. They met in the early 1930s, just as Hepburn's Hollywood career was taking off. What started as a close friendship quickly, according to biographers like William J. Mann in his extensively researched book, Kate, the Woman Who Was Hepburn, blossomed into a deep, romantic relationship. Harding became Hepburn's constant companion, confidant, and often her live-in partner. Harding became Hepburn's constant companion, confidant, and for many years, her live-in partner. They shared homes, traveled together extensively, and Harding managed many aspects of Hepburn's personal life, acting as a sort of social secretary or assistant. In the public eye, Harding was simply Kate's devoted friend, her loyal shadow. But those who observe them closely, and the biographers who have examined their correspondence and the accounts of their contemporaries, noted an intensity, a closeness, That seemed to go far beyond platonic friendship. Mann, drawing on interviews with sources who knew both women, describes their relationship as the central, stabilizing force in Hepburn's life for many years. Harding provided a sanctuary, a place where Hepburn could be her true self, away from the relentless pressure and prying eyes of Hollywood. Their bond was deep, complex, and, most importantly, hidden from the public. It was a relationship built on shared intellect, mutual respect, and a profound love that dared not speak its name publicly in that era. Biographers often cite their letters and the fierce loyalty and deep affection with which Hepburn regarded Harding as key indicators of the relationship's true nature. Harding was, in many ways, Hepburn's first long-term, deeply committed partner, a relationship that spanned many years and endured through much of Hepburn's rise to superstardom and the beginning of her complex time with Spencer Tracy. Even after their alleged romantic relationship evolved or ended, Laura Harding remained a fiercely loyal friend until her death, buried near the Hepburn family plot. But Laura Harding was not the only woman with whom Katharine Hepburn is believed to have shared a romantic connection. Before and during the early years of her relationship with Harding, biographers and historical accounts suggest other significant emotional and possibly physical bonds. One name that emerges from this period is Nancy Hamilton, a talented writer, director, and producer. Hamilton was a prominent figure in New York theater circles. Sources indicate that Hepburn had an intense relationship with Hamilton in the late 1920s and early 1930s, around the time she was establishing herself on Broadway. This relationship is sometimes described as an early, passionate connection in Hepburn's life before her move to Hollywood and her deepening bond with Laura Harding. Biographers suggest that the energy and intensity of their connection were unmistakable to those around them at the time, though, like all of Hepburn's intimate life, it was kept out of the public eye. Hamilton went on to have a successful career, notably winning an Oscar for Best Documentary for Helen Keller in Her Story in 1955. Their paths continued to cross professionally and socially over the years, a quiet acknowledgement of a history that ran deeper than mere acquaintance. Another name linked to Katharine Hepburn in the 1930s is Frances Rich, the daughter of prominent actress Irene Rich. Frances was a sculptor and had a brief acting career herself. Accounts from biographers, including Mann, suggest that Hepburn had a romantic relationship with Frances Rich during the mid-1930s. This period overlaps with the earlier years of the Laura Harding relationship, suggesting that Hepburn's emotional and romantic life was perhaps more complex and multifaceted than the public image of the solitary, fiercely independent star allowed. The relationship with Rich is often presented as intense, though perhaps shorter-lived than the decades-long bond with Harding. Like the others, this connection was kept entirely private, a secret within the already secretive world of Hollywood's hidden lives. Later in her life, particularly after Spencer Tracy passed away, another woman became Katharine Hepburn's primary companion and live-in partner, Phyllis Wilbourn. Wilbourn was also involved in the theater world and became Hepburn's secretary. Again, publicly, she was introduced and known as Katharine Hepburn's assistant or secretary, a trusted employee who managed her affairs. But similar to Laura Harding, biographers and those who knew Hepburn well in her later years interpret this relationship as being far deeper than professional or platonic. Phyllis Wilbourn lived with Katharine Hepburn for decades, right up until Hepburn's death in 2003. She was the person who cared for Hepburn as her health declined, who shared her quiet life in Connecticut away from the Hollywood glare. The intense bond, the shared domesticity, and the lack of any male partners in Hepburn's life during this long period with Wilbourn led many to conclude that theirs was a partnership based on deep affection and commitment. Again, a romantic relationship kept hidden from the broader public, although likely an open secret among her closest circle. While perhaps less extensively documented than the Harding relationship in terms of early intensity, the sheer duration and domestic closeness of the relationship with Wilbourn in Hepburn's later life is cited as powerful evidence by biographers and those who believe Hepburn lived a primarily lesbian life in private. The public narrative, crafted by Hollywood and perpetuated by Hepburn's own guardedness, focused almost exclusively on her relationships with men, particularly Spencer Tracy. But according to these accounts, the reality was far more complex. The relationships with Laura Harding and Phyllis Wilbourn were, for extended periods, the central, intimate partnerships of her life. They provided the emotional sustenance, the companionship, and the private space where she could be her authentic self. This double life required immense strength, vigilance, and sacrifice. Every public appearance, every interview, every photograph had to be carefully managed to avoid any hint of scandal. Imagine the constant stress, the inability to openly celebrate your love or introduce your partner in society. This secrecy likely contributed to Hepburn's reputation for being difficult, reserved, or even prickly, a defense mechanism built up over decades to protect her deepest vulnerabilities and the people she loved. The naming of these women as her partners didn't come from a deathbed confession or a tell-all memoir published by Hepburn herself. It emerged gradually after her death. As biographers were granted access to her papers, interviewed friends and family who felt freer to speak, and pieced together the clues she left behind, perhaps intentionally, perhaps not. It's an interpretation based on a wealth of circumstantial evidence, personal accounts, and a deeper understanding of the social history of Hollywood and the gay community within it during that era. While Hepburn herself never used labels or made public pronouncements about her sexuality, the evidence gathered by historians and biographers paints a compelling picture of a woman whose most significant emotional and romantic attachments were often with other women, and who navigated this reality with fierce determination and absolute secrecy. So, while Katharine Hepburn didn't stand on a stage and name the lesbian actors she dated in secret, the secret itself, and the names of the women she allegedly shared her life with, have been revealed through careful biographical work and the passage of time, allowing a more complete and perhaps more authentic understanding of this extraordinary woman. It's a testament to the pressures of old Hollywood that such a vital part of her identity had to remain hidden for so long, and a testament to her skill that she managed to keep it largely concealed, while living so much of her life in the intense glare of the public spotlight. The true cost of that secrecy, the emotional toll of living a double life for decades, is something only Katharine Hepburn herself could ever truly know. But understanding this aspect of her story adds another layer to her legend, highlighting not just her talent and independence, but her incredible resilience in a world that demanded conformity while she yearned for authenticity in her private life. Katharine Hepburn continued to act well into her later years, earning critical acclaim and commercial success even as her health began to fail. She battled a neurological disorder that caused a visible tremor, but she never lost her sharp wit or her determination. She published her autobiography, Me, in 1991, which, while popular, was notable for its careful omissions regarding her deepest personal relationships. The death of Spencer Tracy in 1967 was a profound blow, and she often spoke of her grief and devotion to him. However, she was not alone in her later life. Phyllis Wilborn was there, a constant presence, caring for her in the beautiful, sprawling house in Fenwick, Connecticut, which had been her family home. Katharine Hepburn died on June 29, 2003, at the age of 96. In her home in Fenwick, her death marked the end of an era, the passing of one of the last true legends of the golden age of Hollywood. Tributes poured in from around the world, celebrating her unparalleled career, her 4 Oscars, and her unique, independent spirit. She was remembered as a force of nature, a pioneering woman who forged her own path. She was cremated, and her ashes were interred in the family plot in Cedar Hill Cemetery in Hartford, Connecticut. Katharine Hepburn's legacy is, therefore, a complex tapestry. She remains one of the most revered figures in cinematic history, a standard of excellence for actresses. Her on-screen independence and intelligence inspired generations. But her story is also a powerful, poignant illustration of the immense pressure faced by stars in old Hollywood, particularly those whose true identities or desires did not fit the narrowly defined expectations of the time. The secret of her relationships with women, brought to light through the work of biographers and the accounts of those closest to her after her passing, adds a crucial dimension to understanding her life. It highlights the sacrifices she made, the hidden struggles she endured, and the strength it took to protect the people she loved and the life she built for herself, even if it had to exist partially in the shadows. Her story is a reminder that behind the glittering facade of Hollywood, there were, and are, real people navigating complex lives, often at a great personal cost. Katharine Hepburn was not just a great actress. She was a woman of immense courage, both on screen and off, living her truth as best she could in a world that wasn't ready to accept it. Her story continues to fascinate, a testament to the enduring power of her persona and the timeless human struggle between public expectation and private reality.